Hello, I'm Angela Princewell, and on this segment of Ask AP, the question I'm answering is why do I have to disclose an account if the balance is $0? Great question. I'm glad you asked that question because it's one that we find comes up pretty often working with our clients. So, where to start? Well, firstly, you have an obligation to, if you're going through the equalization process as a result of your separation, you have a disclosure obligation. You need to disclose your assets, debts, liabilities on the date of marriage. There's on the date of separation. There's obviously date of marriage deductions that you can take if that applies to you, and there's excluded property. So there's a lot that goes into the equalization calculations, and we cannot do that if you don't have full disclosure. And of course, it is practical, right? If how do you calculate equalization if you don't provide full disclosure? But I get it. You're saying, well, your question is, well, there's nothing to divide here. It is literally zero. So why do I have to disclose that account? Well, firstly, that's your word, right? Like, let's look at it from a practical perspective. If you're going through a separation, chances are there is some mistrust between you and your partner. And so, you may say there's $0 in their account, and all of a sudden they're thinking, oh my God, there's $1 million in that account. So what's the simplest practical way to get rid of, creating something bigger out of nothing is just to provide the disclosure. And also it's just, you're required to provide disclosure. It's not, there's no qualification as to how much has to be in the account for you to disclose it. It's just an obligation for you to provide full disclosure, and that includes providing accounts that are $0. So when you do that, then you put the issue to rest. You don't have the other party suspicious and wondering if there's more in their account, because I do get a lot of times people would tell me, but there's no money there. There's no money. It's closed. I've not used it in a while. It's $0. He knows or she knows. They know. Well, it's not. Just provide the disclosure is what I would say. And I know, I get it. It's a lot of trouble. I understand. Sometimes it's just too much trouble to go through to provide disclosure that would really ultimately show that it's $0. But it's your obligation under Ontario family laws. And I find that from a practical perspective, it really does put a lot of issues to rest. Let's look at it again from another angle. So we've talked about sort of the mistrust and somebody else and someone thinking there might be more to it until you can provide disclosure to kind of set the record straight. But even, if you prepare a financial statement, for example, and you will meet an account because it has $0, or I've even seen some cases where it's like a few $100s and someone's thinking, well, this really doesn't have any bearing on, equalization per se. A couple of $100 here or there is not going to make a difference. And you can imagine when it's even $0. But it's important to the process, right? Because at some point, your financial statement, if your matter does go to trial, your financial statement could go to your credibility. So because you're required to make full and frank financial disclosure, completely, unqualified, whether that account is in overdraft or zero, provide the disclosure. If you don't, then the other party could, use it at trial to say, well, you're not a credible person. So if there's credibility findings that need to be made, they could rely on those errors in your financial statement to attack your credibility. So it's really not worth it. If it's $0, go through a little trouble, provide those statements. Also, during the process, if you omit certain accounts in the beginning, then now the other side, this ties to the mistrust, now wants, to get even more disclosure from you. Now, all of a sudden, they want confirmation from every bank that exists, confirming that you don't have an account with them. And it becomes a lot more trouble. And a judge hearing it would say, well, when you did a financial statement, which is a sworn document, you never disclosed this particular account. So there might be a credible basis for believing that you have other accounts, either with the same institution or other institutions that you haven't disclosed. So if you can, as soon as possible, very early on, disclose everything so that you avoid this situation where you're now being put to more trouble to provide disclosure that may not even exist. And you also don't want your credibility challenged later in court. So yes, I hope that answers your question for why you have to provide disclosure even if the account is at $0. And until next time, it's bye for now.